We've seen stars or superstars slowly decline over time, and eventually every player has to retire. But not all stars see their careers end the same way. For a player like Kobe, who, despite struggling in his last few years, he went out with a bang. Scoring 60 points in his last ever NBA game is incredible. In every single game during his final season, everyone was cheering him on as they celebrated his greatness. Unfortunately, most superstars don't get the same treatments, whether it's because of injuries or something else. In fact, a lot of them face a similar circumstance as Carmelo Anthony, bouncing around from team to team looking for somebody to give him a chance. Now, I'm not sure if Melo is gonna retire, but if his NBA career is over, then he definitely had one of the worst endings ever. How's it going, fellas? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at 10 former NBA stars whose careers ended in an unremarkable or terrible fashion. Number 10, Penny Hardaway. In my opinion, Penny's career went in a similar direction as Grant Hill. Both were superstars early in their careers, and everybody thought they were going to take over the league. But unlike Hill, who reinvented himself later in his career in Phoenix, Penny did not do that. After a terrible knee injury in 1998 at the age of 26, Penny's career rapidly went downhill. He never recovered successfully and spent his last 5 seasons averaging fewer than 8 points a game. After retiring in 2007, he tried to make a comeback, joining the Miami Heat and his former teammate Shaq. But unfortunately, he was not good, so he was cut from the team just 1 month later. Number 9, Shawn Kemp. In his prime, Shawn Kemp was a 6-time All-Star and arguably the most explosive and athletic power forward we've ever seen. In the 2000 offseason, at the age of 31, Kemp just had a season of averaging nearly 18 points a game for the Cavs. But after getting traded to Portland, his game fell off a cliff. From 2001 to 2003, his last 3 seasons in the NBA, he averaged about 6 points a game. His decline was mainly due to drugs and gaining a lot of weight. Apparently, he was about 340 pounds around that time. However, he did try to make a comeback with the Denver Nuggets. In 2006, he reconnected with coach George Karl. Kemp said, "I started jogging. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to come here. I knew Karl wouldn't take it easy on me. He hasn't taken it easy on me since I've been here. I ran better than most of the big guys here. I'm a little more advanced than I thought I was. I look forward to hearing from them." Unfortunately, Kemp never heard back from them. Number 8, Yao Ming. In 8 seasons of playing in the NBA, Yao was selected for 8 All-Star games. Incredibly popular, one of the best players in the league, and very injury-prone. That basically sums up Yao's career. If it weren't for those foot injuries, he'd be right up there with the top 10 centers to ever play. But at the age of 30, he had 3 different fractures in his left foot, and it was all too much for him to continue. Yao and Tracy McGrady as well, their time in Houston was marred with injuries, and if they were healthy the entire time, they could have done so much more. A couple years after retirement, Yao became a first-ballot Hall of Famer, a well-deserved nomination as he drastically changed the game both on and off the court. Number 7, Steve Francis. Francis was a 3-time All-Star, one of the most explosive point guards we've ever seen, but a couple of issues led to his sudden downfall. When he was in Houston and Jeff Van Gundy became their new head coach, they didn't really get along. Van Gundy started to focus the offense around Yao, which was better for the team, but Francis was upset. He was upset he wasn't getting enough touches and his numbers were dropping. After getting traded to Orlando, he once again had problems with the coaching staff. And then in New York, he suffered tendinitis in his right knee, which effectively ended the rest of his career. At the age of 30, the once exciting and energetic Francis was out of the NBA, and afterwards his life continued to go in a downward spiral. After his stepfather committed suicide, Francis became a heavy drinker. He got arrested multiple times as well, and even today he's still recovering from all of that. Number 6, Brandon Roy. Roy was one of the best players in the league when he was healthy. Even Kobe Bryant once said that Brandon Roy was harder to guard than Kevin Durant. What made him so good was that he had a natural feel for the game. He was pretty much everything you wanted in a shooting guard. However, at the tender age of 26, Roy was diagnosed with degenerative arthritis in his knees. Basically, the cartilage would slowly erode away until there was nothing left, and he could no longer play through the pain. While he did have a great moment in the 2011 playoffs, he had nothing left to give after that. Even when he tried to make a comeback with the Timberwolves, he suffered another knee injury that required season-ending surgery. After that, his career was officially over. Number 5, Tracy McGrady. McGrady's last couple years were very hard to watch. To see a former superstar like T-Mac struggling when he was barely 30 years old, yeah, it was rough. In his last 3 seasons, he played for 4 different teams: the Knicks, the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Spurs. I'm sure nobody remembers anything he did on those teams, because frankly, he didn't really do much. His contemporaries also knew what T-Mac has been going through and felt bad that his career was ending this way. At one point, these two guys were going head-to-head in their primes. But by 2010, Kobe was still winning championships while T-Mac was desperately holding on to his career. His final season was spent sitting on the bench watching as the Spurs reached the finals and almost won. But even if they did win, T-Mac himself said that even if he did get a ring on the Spurs, it wouldn't mean anything because he didn't do anything to help the team win. Number 4, Gilbert Arenas. We've all heard of the gun incident with Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton, but what really ended Gilbert's career was a knee injury he suffered against the Charlotte Bobcats. This was around April of 2007. He was diagnosed with a torn MCL, which normally isn't that bad and players usually recover from it. But that wasn't the case with Arenas. He had multiple setbacks after the surgery and never returned back to his all-star self. By December of 2011, Arenas became the first player to ever be waived by the amnesty clause. It was a new clause established during the lockout as a way for teams to move on from a bad contract and not have it count towards their salary cap. But Arenas was still getting paid. In fact, he would continue to get paid for years after he retired. By the age of 30, he had a short stint in Memphis. As the backup point guard to Mike Conley, he would average about 4 points a game. That was the last season of his career. Number 3, Allen Iverson. It's very rare we see a player of Iverson's talent and popularity on this list. Near the end of his career, it was obvious he started to decline, but he refused to believe that. In 2009, he publicly voiced his displeasure of coming off the bench.
I don't know any franchise players that come off the bench. I don't know any Olympian that come off the bench. I don't know any All-Star come off the bench. I don't know any former MVP that come off the bench. I don't know any 3-time scoring champion come off the bench. I don't know any first-team All-NBA come off the bench. Why Allen Iverson?
Iverson's reluctance to accept a bench role in Memphis caused him to leave the team for personal reasons. A couple weeks later, he rejoined the 76ers to a huge standing ovation from the crowd. However, after playing 25 games, he left the Sixers as well. Afterwards, he played a year in Turkey and, well, that was it. It was a strange ending to the career of a legendary player like Iverson. Had he accepted a lesser role, he might have been able to play for a few more years. He wasn't even that bad near the end of his career, it's just that he wasn't good enough to be a primary option anymore. Number 2, Ralph Sampson. When we talk about superstar big men who fell off due to injuries, normally someone like Bill Walton would come to mind. But I did not include Walton because even though his injuries robbed him of his prime, he was still very productive later on. Near the end of his career, he won 6th Man of the Year and a championship with the Celtics. So his career ended pretty well given the circumstances. But the same cannot be said for Sampson. After winning Rookie of the Year, making an All-NBA team, making 4 straight All-Star teams, while averaging over 20 and 10 for multiple seasons, Sampson started to get major issues with his knees and back. After getting a bad knee injury in 1987, he would get traded to Golden State. Then he got traded again and he finished his last 3 seasons playing in only 61 games combined, averaging about 3 points a game. Sampson is on a long list of Rockets players who saw their careers end because of injuries. But in his prime, him and Hakeem Olajuwon were the original Twin Towers. They even led the Rockets to the 1986 finals, when they were both so young. If it wasn't for Sampson's injuries and some drug issues with other players, they could have been a legit dynasty. And number 1, Magic Johnson. There's no doubt that the end of Magic's career was different than any other player's. He went from battling against Michael Jordan in the 1991 finals to announcing he contracted HIV a couple months later. At the time, nobody knew as much about HIV as we do today, and he used his platform to support the cause to fight the virus. Even today, he's still active in the HIV community. His announcement was one of the saddest, if not the saddest moment in NBA history, because Magic meant so much to the sport, and everyone loved his charisma and the way he played. However, it wasn't all bad because afterwards, Magic still played on the Dream Team in 1992. He also made a comeback in 1996 and played well. The fans loved that Magic was back, but he had some issues with the team. His teammates were complaining about playing time, and they felt like the entire team revolved around Magic, even though it wasn't his team anymore. Eventually, Magic felt like he had enough of all of this and announced his final retirement after that season. And that's all, folks. Those were 10 players who saw a terrible end to their careers. Some of it was because of injuries, others off-court issues, and other times it was ego. Do you think any other players deserve to be on this list? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.